Hi everybody, Andy here, and I want to talk to you in this video about redaction in Wireshark. Now, some of you who are Wireshark power users may be saying, wait a minute, redaction? I've never heard of anything like this before, and you would be right. You probably haven't. This is more of a technique than it is something that is actually built into Wireshark. So let's talk a little bit about this. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by redaction, if we just go to Google here and we say redaction images, let's take a quick look for images on redaction. This is what I mean. So you can see all of these images are images of, or examples of redaction. You can see that we have sentences, words, et cetera, that have been basically blacked out so that you can't really see what information was behind that. Okay, so what we want to do is be able to do this in Wireshark. Now, some of you may be asking, what's the use case here? The use case is for things like demonstrations or where you're doing screenshots, putting them in documentation, or maybe making them part of a customer record. And there's some information that for whatever reason, you want to redact from that screenshot, right? Maybe it's to focus the audience or whatever. So I have just a simple capture file here. There's nothing special about this capture. It's just a capture that I'm going to show you how to do this with. Now I am in my default profile. It's actually the better default profile. I'll put a link up above here of how you can get my profiles. Having different profiles other than the default is a really, really important skill in Wireshark, and I've got that video that tells you all about that. So I'm going to start here with the better default profile, which may look a little bit different to some of you because it's not the default. So it's got time delta column and it's got a bunch of filters up here already built into it and a little bit more, I think, colorful colorizing. All right, so let's say that I wanted to redact these three packets, this application data. I don't want this to be visible on the screen. However, I don't want to modify what the contents of this capture are. So there's a couple of interesting little features built into Wireshark that may get us there. Let's try these. So one thing we can do is we can select the packet that we're interested in. We can right click and then click on Mark Unmarked Packet, or you can see it's Control M in Windows. So I'm going to click on that and you can see it has marked the packet. Now this is with the default marking, which has kind of a dark background and a white foreground, and indicates that this packet is different, right? It's a different color than anything else that's in the packet capture. And you can do this on multiple packets, just like that, okay? Let's take that off because it's not really redacting, but let's talk about another feature. So I'm just hitting Control M. I'm selecting the packet and hitting Control M. So we've returned it now to normal. The other feature is to right click and then say Ignore Packet, which is Control D in Windows. That's interesting. So if I do this, Control D, on multiple packets, what you can see is that these packets are now ignored. The length is still there, the delta times are still there, but all of the contents of the packet are ignored and they have gone away. Now this may work for some of you. It doesn't really work for me because a lot of the times when you ignore packets like this, it's really telling Wireshark to completely ignore this packet as though it didn't exist. So the problem with that is that if this packet is part of a conversation, like a TCP conversation or something like that, you're going to end up with a situation where you now introduce errors into the packet capture and into the analysis process, which really aren't errors at all. But it did accomplish the task. So this may be a way for us to redact information and then have nothing display when we're doing screenshots, etc. All right, I'm going to turn that toggle back. I'm still not totally happy with that though. All right, so here's another option. Now I'm going to change the configuration of Wireshark and I don't want to change my better default profile. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down here to the profile and I'm going to say Manage Profiles. Okay, there's my better default. You can see it is selected. I'm going to duplicate this. So it's now created a better default copy, and I'm going to replace copy with the words with redaction. So I've now created and say okay. So there's now a new profile, better default with redaction. Now as far as anybody's concerned at this point, nothing has changed because I haven't really made any changes. I've simply created this new profile. Okay, back in our packet capture, what I want to do is go to Edit Preferences. And in the Fonts and Colors area, you can see here are the marked packet right here and the ignored packet. So what I want to do is edit the marked packet, and instead of having a dark background with a light foreground, and I'm going to change that light foreground, and I'm going to check on black here. All right, and say OK. All right, perfect. So now it looks like I have redacted the information. Let's try it, right? So let's mark the packet. Oh, look at that. But you can see here, at least on my screen, I can still see this information here. So I guess that the default color for marked packets actually isn't a black background. It's close to black, but it's not entirely black. So let's go back in there, Preferences, Fonts and Colors, and this time I'm going to select that background, and yes, look at where the little pointer is. It's not all the way to black. So I'm going to also make that black like that and say OK. There we go. Now I cannot see that information at all. Let's do another one. Let's hit Control M. Control M. Yeah, that looks really much better. I cannot see the contents of those packets in the packet list. Be cautious here, because even though we don't see the contents, if we were to take a screenshot of this, we would still see, if we selected those packets, we would still see their dissection in the packet details part of the screen. So you have to be careful, because this form of redaction doesn't really remove it like the ignore function did, where even the packet information was gone. But that looks pretty good. This is something I could use. So as long as I wasn't showing this part, I think that redaction would work quite well. Okay. So that's the little technique I wanted to share with you. I hope you like this. I hope you can make use of it if you do screen captures, if you're creating images for presentations, for customer records, things like that, that this little technique of redaction and putting this into your default profile is helpful to you. So with that, and with all the packet capture work that you do, one thing I would remind you is to capture every day. Thanks for watching.